Hey everyone, it's Matt here from Two Chefs in Love, and today I want to be smoking a pork butt. Now, for those of you who don't know, the pork butt, or the Boston butt, is not actually the butt of the pig at all. It's the upper shoulder area. So you have the picnic ham, which is the lower shoulder area and the top part of the front legs. Top part is the Boston butt, and then the actual butt is the rump, or where the ham comes from. So with this, it has a lot of connective tissue and intramuscular fat that'll need to break down, so you need to go low and slow, which is why smoking it is really good. Or if you want to cut it in pieces, put it in an Instant Pot, that can work too. As far as the ingredients for this rub, we're going to start with sugar. So because Melissa and I are dieting, we're going to use fake sugar. And since the fake sugar is twice as sweet, we're going to cut it down some. So usually I would use about a half a cup. Instead, I'm using a quarter cup of the Splenda brown sugar, or you can use, half a cup of brown sugar, or maybe a quarter cup brown sugar, quarter cup regular white sugar. So next we're doing paprika. I really like smoked paprika, however, it's going to impart way too much flavor. And for a lot of these rubs, you kind of want the paprika as more of a filler. That way it can cake on when it's smoking. So you don't want it to be super flavorful and overpower the rest of the spices that you got going on in there. So we're just using regular sweet paprika. And then we got kosher salt. Remember, there's a huge difference between iodized salt or table salt versus kosher salt. You're gonna have to use 60, if you're measuring by volume, whether tablespoons or quarter cup or whatever, you're gonna need to use something like 60% more kosher salt to make up the same amount of salt with table salt. So instead of trying to worry about all that math, just make sure that you pay attention to the recipes, and this recipe calls for kosher salt. After that, we have some black pepper. It's always best to grind it yourself to get the best flavor. So I've already ground it, as you see here. And then we have some garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, and comino, or cumin. Then the ratios for all this is half a cup, and then half a cup sugar if you're using regular sugar, quarter cup if you're using the Splenda, and then quarter cup salt, quarter cup garlic powder, eighth of a cup or 2 tablespoons of onion powder, eighth of a cup or 2 tablespoons black powder, then 1 tablespoon comino, 1 tablespoon chili powder. Or if you want to scale it up or scale it down, 1 part, 2 parts, 4 parts, 8 parts. Pretty simple. So what we're gonna do first is put it all in our bowl so we can mix it all together. Good enough. Just whisk this around until it's homogenized. This might make a little bit more than what you need, and that's okay. That's why we got the wet hand and dry hand. That way you're not dipping your wet hand back into here. Make sure you wash your hands before you do this. That way you can still reuse whatever you don't use today later on for something else. This goes good on any kind of pork. So if you're doing pork chops or pork loin, all that stuff. You want to make sure you break apart the little bits in here. Sometimes you got to get in there, especially with that brown sugar. It likes to clump up, so you got to get in there with your hands, break it apart. That way it's all one nice, smooth, homogeneous mix. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, when I'm using a rub, I like to put some sort of base on top of the meat. If I'm doing brisket, I'll use oil, but anytime I'm doing pork, I love to use mustard. So the mustard will help the spices stick to the pork. Now before I got all of this prepared, I wanted to make sure that I rinsed off my meat and that I also dried it. Because if you want some good caramelization on the edges, you want to try to keep it dry, especially in the beginning. So that's about all I need. You just want a little light coat of mustard. And then you can start with your rub. One thing that I found is if I really try to rub this in, I'm going to get more on my hands than I am on my pork. So instead, I'm just going to pat it down. That way it sticks to it. And I'll flip it over, make sure I get the other side. Have a feeling I'm not gonna have any spice left over, but that's all right. That's what I got this for. And you want to make sure you get it along the edges too. Everybody gets some loving with this. All right, looks like I got more on the table than I did on my meat, but that's okay. So I'm gonna let this sit while I get my charcoal ready, and I'll see you then. Bye. All right, everybody. So we're back. It's cold outside. I got the grill going, so let's get this hopping and popping. I got my grill going at 300 degrees. Meat sitting right here. Set the grill off. Notice how I have half charcoal that's lit, half charcoal that's not lit. The reason for that is if I lit all the charcoal and let that go, then it'll get way too hot and it'll burn out way too quick. So this way, let's see if I can get this guy without making too much of a mess. This way, that fire will slowly creep along, make that charcoal last a lot longer, keep an even temperature. I just got to keep checking it throughout to make sure that that it doesn't go too high or too low. See, it's already getting a little bit low. That's because I took the lid off. And so I'll open and close this guy, and I also have the opening down on the bottom to let more air in, all that fun stuff. Notice how I got the fire on the back of the pit, but I got my vent on the other side. That way the smoke can go from the fire over the meat and then out the vent. All right, I'll check in with y'all guys later. Okay, we're back. It's been about 3 hours now. It was keeping steady at 300. Now it's gone to about 250. So I'm gonna blow on the coals to kind of get some life back in them. And I have a spray bottle with about a tablespoon mustard, 2 tablespoons oil, and about a cup of water. Just shake it up, and we can use that to spray down our pork. That way the bark doesn't get too much. And there we go. Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna start. I have another chimney of coals. I'll get that going, throw those on there, and then that should be good for another 3 hours or so, and we'll check the meat then. See ya. All right, guys, it's been in for almost 5 hours. Smoker's still hovering around 275. I got my third chimney of coals ready to go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little shortcut. Here's my pork butt right here. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that onto the roasting rack. And then get that in the oven. There we go. Get that guy in the oven for a few more hours. That way I can put the other charcoal on there and smoke some more meats. So we'll see what it looks like when it comes out the oven. So here's the pork butt after it's smoked for 4 hours and then been in the oven at 300 for 3 hours. So there's some parts that are shreddable, but then there's other parts like right here in the center that's not. So we need to let this go for another half hour to an hour and then we'll check it again. All right, just took it out of the oven. It's about 7 o'clock right now. It's been in there for 9 hours, which makes sense because when you cook pork butt, it should be an hour to an hour and a half per pound. It's 7 pounds, which would mean that it would cook in about 7 to 10 hours. And as you can see, there's little to no resistance, which means that this thing's gonna shred easy. So we'll see what that looks like when it's cooled down and all shredded up. All right, so here's the pork butt after I've let it rest, shredded it up, and that's some nice, beautiful, succulent pulled pork. All right, so that's the video. Leave a comment down below if you like it. Give it a thumbs up, share, follow us, all that fun stuff. See y'all next time. Bye.